Hello, and welcome to Lore Watch, roundtable freeform discussion about lore and your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my Lorewalking co-host with me today, Matt Rossi. How you doing today, Matt?
It's more like lore spinning at the moment, or lore vaguely lurching around. Not so much lore walking. That requires focused direction, and I'm not capable of that right now.
I can't argue with that.
Lore lurching.
Well, friends, we are continuing our discussion today about lore walking, and in particular, if you listen to the last episode, we covered the 3 that are available on the PTR right now, and again, that's subject to potentially change depending on how things go, but we reported on them and commented on them in their current state. The one today is actually provided by somebody who is completely and totally anonymous and nobody knows whatsoever, and was sent to us via Discord. And as a reminder, if you have questions or topics or things you want us to cover, go ahead and send those in to podcast@blizzardwatch.com. That's our email address. Put in the subject line what show it's for and any special pronunciation of your name in the body of the email. If you want to hit us up on those Discord channels, we have the Q and Podcast question channel, which is open to everybody. Same rules apply. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you can go ahead and hit us up on the Patreon Q and Podcast questions channel. And then if you are a Patreon subscriber, you also have the other option of going to Patreon and dropping us a message there and making Liz send it to us. I really like this option because it makes Liz feel like she's involved, and I'm okay with that. This one is actually I'm not going to read the question in the way that it was phrased, but it was basically asking us what we would like to see as far as like the stories in Lorewalking, like what they would be. And I don't know about you, Matt. I've given it a lot of thought of what I would like to see, but I'm curious what your choices are, or at least your first choice, and then we can bounce back.
Sully Blue.
I'm sorry, what?
Sully Blue, specifically Sully Blue's letter.
Interesting. That's a deep cut. That's the one that's in Old World, right? That's Ironforge?
The wetlands. Yeah, no, it's related to Ironforge, but it starts in the wetlands.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because you bring it to Sarah Blue, right, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring it to Ironforge once you find it, and then then you get the My Dear Sarah letter, and you can read it, and it's real effing sad.
Well, isn't it based off a real letter?
Oh yeah, it's based on a real Civil War letter from
Sullivan.
I don't remember the guy's name. Sullivan Ballou, that is his name, yes. And I don't think it's spelled the same. I think it's Ballaou or something.
Yeah, it ends with a U instead of an O inside of the game. Yeah.
But basically, what happens is, like I said, you're in the wetlands doing other stuff. Like you're not even. This isn't one of those quests that automatically triggers, which is one of the reasons I think it's a good inclusion into Lorewalking type stuff, because you could easily miss it even if you've been playing for like however many years. Like if you've been playing for 20 plus years, you could still have missed it. And so I say this as somebody who didn't get to play it until like a year and a half into the game. I had already leveled multiple characters through the wetlands, and I just stumbled upon it while I was doing other stuff. It's just out near one of the bridges that's broken that would otherwise go into the zone north of the wetlands, which is, I want to say Arathi. It might not be Arathi. Wow, man, it is hard to remember where all these zones are. But when you go there, you basically find that there's a bunch of dark irons blowing up the buildings and so forth. And you're like, ooh, wow, we got to stop that. And while you're doing that, you can stumble upon the letter because it's just laying there on the bridge next to there's a bunch of dead bodies. You pick up the letter and it's like, ooh, this is something you should take to Ironforge. And you take it to Ironforge and you give it to his wife, and she basically reads it and you get to hear it. I think there's like an actual quest where you see it from the perspective of Sully and his other dwarven soldiers as they're getting wiped out. But even if it isn't, it's still worth it just for the just for the, I don't want to say human touch because they're all dwarves, but just for the small touch. World of Warcraft is often about huge giant things happening. But the personal cost of what's going on is often missed. And I feel that that's one of the reasons I'm saying this quest, because I always felt like this is a nice example of the real cost of what you end up doing. These people who end up in the military of the various factions. In this case, it's not even dwarves against orcs. It's dwarves against dwarves. It's dark iron dwarves versus regular bronzebeard dwarves and Ironforge. And it's not like it's not all one-sided dark irons are evil, but it is very much it's just tragic. It's tragic that this young man dies. He'll never see his wife again. She'll never see him again. It's a quiet moment. And it's one of those things you get a lot in WoW.
And I think it was definitely more impactful before we had the Shadowlands and all that stuff fleshed out, and before we knew, and even then it might not be that they meet again. But you're right. I forgot that this is a whole quest chain. Like it's like you find the letter, you go to her, and then Magni Bronzebeard gets involved and winds up making a tribute to him. Like, I think it's the whole thing. It's called like a King's Tribute or something like that. But like, I vaguely remember this because I was playing Alliance in Vanilla WoW for a good section of time, at least half of the time in Vanilla WoW. And I remember stumbling upon that when leveling because for whatever reason, I took my night off to go level in Dwarflands. Don't ask.
That was actually a very common thing.
I know it was.
When you hit the level to go, like you were like level 12 or something, you could go over and continue doing the night elf stuff. But if you wanted to get to Ironforge or Stormwind where the trainers were, you could immediately get on a boat and go to the wetlands. And then you could just run to Ironforge. And once you get to Ironforge, you could just go straight to Stormwind. Like there's a tram. Yeah. So you could do a trifecta and just get to all the cities so you could start training earlier. But I did that. But you ended up leveling in the wetlands because you're running across the wetlands.
It's there. You might as well.
You might as well do the quest.
But I remember. So I think this is a really interesting. And I think it's a good choice because it has the potential to follow the sort of like the 3-act reveal that they've been sort of putting up for the Lorewalking, right? So you could have the whole thing of like, oh, do you remember this quest, this letter, blah blah blah, and it could take you to the time before, right? Like you're saying, like it could take you back to when the division between the dwarves happened. Right.
Yeah, you could work that in, absolutely.
Because it's related, right? Then you can then work up to the battle that actually took place with Sully and his men, and then finish it off with redoing the quest of the King's Tribute line, right? Like you can bookend that so that it ends with what we know, but fills in like sort of like experience a little bit of the blanks beforehand, which I think that's a really good pick, Matt. I'm really impressed with that choice.
I just like the name Sully Baloo, to be completely honest. That's one of the reasons I've always remembered it. His name's Sully Baloo. It's just a nice, solid, dwarven sounding name.
It is
Sully.
It is a very dwarven name.
Yeah. For all that I kind of sometimes I bag on WoW dwarves, mostly just because of the facial features that they had at the time, because 2004 dwarves, male dwarves were just not good. That was just no. That was a very bad phase.
Only
female
surpassed
dwarves
by
were
gnomes.
Fine. Yeah. Female dwarves were fine. Gnomes had a kind of manic look to them, like they just didn't have time to control their facial hair or head hair or anything. But dwarves looked straight up like their face was like a pickaxe. Like it was just all coming forward to the nose, and it was just like, yikes. So I'll play a girl dwarf. They look okay. They don't look this bad. But in terms of lore, I mean, dwarves haven't really gotten as much as other races have. And when they do, it's usually Titan related. It's not dwarf related.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a little bit of it, but it would be nice to see a little more deeper dive into that. My initial pick is a little bit grander than that. And it's something that I've always wanted to see since I think we first started playing WoW, especially with finding out about the Elemental Lords, is I'd like to see the creation and imprisonment of the elementals in the elemental planes and everything that led up to it. Like, I'd like to see the time before the old gods got here, like showing the elementals like at war or doing what they were doing before the old gods got here, then having them see them being subjugated and used as generals or as essentially controlled chess pieces by the old gods, and then also getting into some of the things that we thought was happening, because Therazane didn't really seem to be involved in a lot of the elemental goofiness that was happening at the time. And like, I think I know I called this out, but I think you also notice it as well. The times that we go back to Ny'alotha and experience like Ny'alotha under siege, Therazane's forces are never there. Like it's always Ragnaros and and Alakir. It's never like her. And Neptulon is often missing as well. I'd like to see what they were up to during that time frame, like if they were scheming or what they were doing, or maybe they were going at it in a different location, at a different place, at a different time, and then see them get imprisoned inside of the elemental planes as they're created, because it also shows us like what happened between Odin and Helya and what that was like and the interactions there. It gives us insight into Odin. It gives us insight into the Black Empire, and it gives us insight into the elementals in a time before they were just, when they were basically in their natural element. And that's something that I always was very curious if we would ever get more of or see, especially with all the stuff we've done. And we hear about it, and we see books about it, but I think that would be really cool to sort of experience as a lore walking event.
I don't disagree. You just made me think of something I can't believe I haven't thought of until just now.
Go for it.
Two of the most powerful of the Titan Watchers are Odin and Raden.
Mm-hmm.
Raden means Master Ra.
Mm-hmm.
Does Odin mean Master O? And that's not a joke. Is this literally the title that they had? And if so, Raden that's a title that we don't know where he got it. We don't know if he was called Master Ra by the Titan Watchers when he was running around with them, when he and Helya worked together. And that's the other thing. Why did he and Helya work together? Why did Raden help Helya with why didn't Odin? At the time, they were supposedly doing what they were been ordered to do. Why wasn't Odin doing it? Why was Raden? Was Helya's relationship with Odin as close as we're led to believe? Like, we're told that in the myths of the Vrykul, that Helya was his daughter.
Yeah, but in so much, like, I think years long, you and I have come to the conclusion like that may be in so much as her genesis was because of him, not so much.
But was it?
Yeah, or maybe it wasn't. Yeah,
that's the thing, because she was working with Raden to help create the elemental planes. Did Odin poach her? When Raden basically got caught up in what happened to him, did Odin say, "Okay, you work for me now. Do this"? Did he do that because he wanted access to her abilities? While she was working with Raden, obviously she's unavailable to go breach the Shadowlands for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes me wonder, how is it that the Mogu could overwhelm and entrap Raden? I mean, the Thunder King supposedly did that, but the Thunder King did that how? How could he beat Raden? Especially before he was empowered by Raden's heart. How did he do it? What if somebody wanted to get Raden out of the way?
Yeah, or somebody gifted a little, maybe something of a little Titan nature to him to get him out of the way, right? Like, seems like something Odin would do, doesn't it? Like,
well, plus we know at the time that they'd just been hit by like the Titan essences, and that was so distressing for Raden that he pulled the essence of Amantul out of himself. Now, did Amantul's essence go to both of them? They were the chosen of Amantul. If Amantul's essence went to Raden, and we know it did because he removed it from himself, and it's what empowered the Veil of Eternal Blossom. Sorry, it's what empowered that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that. So, did he get all of it, or did he pulled it out, put it there? It empowered the veil. It changed the waters of the veil, much like the blood of Azeroth changed the waters of the well. But that doesn't mean it obviously didn't stay there, because we see Amantul's essence when we're doing, I want to say Antorus. Yeah, Antorus, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we're doing that in Legion, we see the essence of all the various Titan Watchers, except I want to say Elune, but that's not the right one. She's on Elundris. She's the one that had the relationship with Elune. Aonar, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We see everyone but Aonar is been caught and is being tortured by the forces of Legion. But that means that if their essences were fragmented, like this by being distributed. Did Odin do something here? Like, did he maybe give his portion of it? Like, because I remember when Baratheon eats, the Thunder King's heart, which means when he eats, like, what Raden got stolen by the Thunder King. Like, he eats the essence that the Thunder King stole from Raden. He immediately starts doing the whole Final Titan thing, which we know is coming. So what you're talking about, all the stuff you just mentioned, could tie into that last expansion.
Yeah.
And we could find out finally who knew what was happening. Like, how much did Mimiron understand of what happened to him? We know that part of the essence of Norgannon went into Mimiron. Is that why Mimiron's
A little bit
like that?
A little bit off his rocker.
Yeah. There's a lot of possibilities. I think that leads into what I would like to see, which is related to what you want to see. Namely, I want to see the Titans coming to Azeroth.
Yeah, so I want to see that too, but I think one of the reasons I also picked the thing that I picked is, like you're saying, it ties in and touches so many things and has the ability to lead in multiple different directions. So it kind of gives them an opportunity to sort of drop whatever they want story-wise going into either direction. Now, you're saying that you want to see the Titans coming to Azeroth. I think we're going to have that coming in the next expansion. But what about going backwards? Is that something you'd be interested in seeing?
What do you mean by backwards? Seeing like Azeroth before the Titans?
And as the Titans discover Azeroth, like, maybe in time of the Black Empire or maybe something like that. Is that something that you'd be interested in seeing?
Here's something I'm interested in. The trolls were under the impression that they were not Titan created, right?
Yeah.
But then when we get to the tomb of Sargeras, which was originally the Temple of Elune.
Yep.
Yeah. When we get in there, there's all these night elf statues and cosmic things, and we know where the night elves come from.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the night elves are the result of something involving the Well of Eternity and dark trolls. And we think that in The War Within, or possibly its sequel, Midnight, we're going to get more information about who these Harakir are. And that's who I want to know about. That's what I want to go back to. Show me who these people are and where they came from. If you're not going to give us a quest doing so normally, do it through lore walking. Show me the origin of life on Azeroth. Is it from the Titans, or does it predate them? Obviously, some things on Azeroth that are alive were originally Titan creations, but it feels like before the coming of the Old Gods, there would have been living things on Azeroth, because the planet was literally so full of life that the planet could sustain a Titan. And the Titan was taking all that energy into itself, which is what caused the elements to start fighting. Were there living things involved? Was it kind of a similar situation to what was happening on Draenor, except that nobody could hit that critical mass the way that they did on that planet? So the planets couldn't become a world-threatening presence because they just couldn't get enough energy. I just want to know what we're dealing with here. What is the origin of this planet? What is the origin of the stuff on it? And you could do that any way you want. There's like hundreds of quests you could do for that. But that's one of the things I'm thinking about in terms of going back. I'd love to see something as simple as seeing like there's an old legend. Do you remember in Stranglethorn when you find the tablets where the trolls talk about the coming of the Titans?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I mean, a lot of newer players may not have ever seen them because, people don't always level through those zones anymore. But I remember the first time I read them, and you get the impression of this troll literally watching as these things come down from space and just start impacting the planet. And I start thinking about, like, if that's like anywhere like what actually happened. You once talked to me about this, and I'm going to throw this one to you to talk about, but what if the Black Empire was actually livable? What if it wasn't all tentacles and monster eyes and people's getting mutated monster mountains wandering around? What if you could be a citizen of the Black Empire? Like, what if there were people like trolls and I don't know, Sethrak maybe, of the snake people? Maybe there were things there already, living there.
Yeah, and it also would potentially answer or have the potential to answer some other questions that we have posed ourselves, right? Which is, what constitutes a Titan construct? Is it only things that were born through whatever crafting of stone and metal and raw material and given life? Or does it include things like the trolls? Because as you pointed out, if they weren't somewhere in the realm of Titan power or Titan construct, why were trolls able to become night elves when they were exposed to the Well of Eternity? Or, the other trolls and the Volpera and the Sethrak and all these others that we don't necessarily have a one-to-one. Like Sethrak, we have an idea of where they came from because we've seen some Titan constructs that look like them now. But what if it wasn't the constructs that came first? Like you pointed this out,
Yeah.
I think when we did our Sethrak stuff specifically, it's what if those were crafted after them because they saw how adaptable they were? And
and that's something that's got me thinking about a lot of other stuff. Like, what if all Titan constructs were rooted in other things they'd seen, or other things that existed before?
Well, I'm going
Titans aren't very inventive.
No, but I want to go a step further. Like because these were born on Azeroth, potentially, do they count as Titan constructs because they were born on Azeroth? Right? Like they were constructed from the material, essentially the living material in spirit in then anima around Azeroth. So do they constitute a Titan construct?
Or a construct of something slightly different than, but equivalent to a Titan.
Right. Whatever Azeroth is.
But that's the thing that leads me to another question. Another thing that since you just asked that question, you immediately made me think of this question, which is related to it. Did all Titans, as they went through their process of essentially awakening and becoming fully functional entities, did they have life growing on them?
Yeah, right. Like
because they were planets.
Yeah, and we've asked that
Are there Titan constructs? Yeah, are there Titan constructs that are essentially the original, like the form of the life that once lived on them? Did they? Because we know that's the other weird thing. We know that they have this. Their little constructs have spirits in them, living things. An iron Vrykul can die, and its spirit goes into the Shadowlands.
Yeah,
which Titans aren't supposed to be able to do, but their creations can.
Well, and that's the thing.
In fact,
we've learned what anima is now, and that changed the game, right? Like we once we learned what that was and that it existed, it started changing how we looked at everything. And we didn't even realize that started happening as early as Mists of Pandaria, going back to your Mogu, because what are they playing with? What are they using to animate? They're using what they call anima. And while it has a physical form there, it has a physical form in the Shadowlands. We're able to interact with it. Food is made of it in there. We consume it. Drink is made of it. Every living thing is made of it. We physically interact with anima in Shadowlands, and we were physically interacting with anima in the Mogu raids, in the Mogu cities.
They those even have those weird robots that can pull it up and throw it at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those things are considered to be alive. They're not just machines. They're considered to be living things.
Yeah, and taking it a step further, we can take that idea and do a whole lore-walking thing about the origin of the Titans. And it doesn't have to necessarily be complete, but that's the question you pose about, did all these Titans have living things born on them, is a solid question, and one that's never been answered. Is Azeroth unique in that regard? Now, we don't think so. We think that there is, precedent for other living beings to be on these Titan worlds, but we don't know, right? It's been so long since they were born and ordering the cosmos that, there's no records of it. There's no information on it that we have. But I bet you the Nathrezim know about it. I bet you that there are other beings or entities in the universe that do. And it would be interesting to see the lore walking be like the life of a Titan. Like the ordering of the planet or the forming of the planet around the nascent soul of the Titan, the life and the planet of them, like as they gestate and become what they are, to them being born, or if they even are actually born that way. Because the other option is everything we know about them is a bloody lie, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing. If we assume for a moment that what we've been told is basically true, like that their souls come from other parts of the the cosmos, the cosmology, and are tossed into the material world to form these titans. We've always kind of assumed that they were coming from the plane of order, but that's just because Amenthul likes order.
Yeah, and
I
posted that was BS a long time ago.
Yeah, but here's the thing: what if Amenthul is from the plane of order? Sure,
and maybe ours from the plane of life, and
yeah, but then you go here. What was Agrimar from?
Plane of fire.
What was Norgannon from? Where was And this comes ultimately to this final question: what if Argus could go back to the Shadowlands because he was the Death Titan?
Yeah,
and that's why you could do that. That's why he could go there.
And I mean, look at the motifs of that fight and that encounter and of Argus. It was that of a Reaper. It was that of the iconography of death, right? Like everything about it, everything that you learned about it was sort of that bridge, which is why Argus had to be used as the engine that it was, and potentially why it was the only one that could go to the Shadowlands, because it was always made to go to the Shadowlands because it came from the Shadowlands.
And that therefore leads into another, I think, even more interesting question. First part of it, which one is Sargeras?
Yeah.
Second one, what if the Void Titan was supposed to happen?
Yeah.
Maybe it would have just been another Titan. Maybe it would have been, if it had been created as it looked like it was going to be before Sargeras killed it, it would have just risen up, been a Titan, gone to the Pantheon and said, "Hey, I represent Void. We need to talk about how we can balance things better because you guys are all out of control and things aren't balanced."
Well, and not only that, but I mean, it goes back to what we talked about with like the first ones and the idea that this grand experiment was in order to keep existence going. And we've posited multiple times that you need to have Void, because without Void, you don't have infinite potential. It sort of is necessary because your choices made out of that infinite potential are what allow life to keep happening. And it may have been part of their design all along to have a Void Titan. And that planet that Sargeras found and did not understand because it was being consumed by Void may have been intentional of the old ones. You're absolutely right.
And here's a question to keep about when you're thinking about that one. Maybe Sargeras went wrong because he was light.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's weak to Fel and became a Fel Titan. Because Fel doesn't obey the light Void rules. Fel breaks them. In fact, Fel breaks rules.
Well, also, I want to pose that you may be onto something there, and I've had this thought as well, parallel to you. If he is a Titan of a representation that is the Titan of light, it would make sense. He's rigid in his belief.
And he's a fanatic.
He is absolutely fanatical.
Which we see over and over again with the light. I mean, there are people in the light who are absolutely great people, and we love those wacky paladins and such. But at the same time, there's like what happened to like one of the greatest of the Naru. She went full bore. I won't listen to anything anyone tells me. I'm going to keep doing this, even though the person I'm doing it to, Illidan, Zira wouldn't listen to him. Even when he's like, "No, I refuse this. I will not have it." She was forcing it on him because the good thing about the light is that it's revelatory. The bad thing about the light is that it is uncompromising. And very much we see that with Zira on the Naru. If Sargeras was originally a light titan who went cuckoo for void puffs, he's basically possibly still a light titan under it. We have a human example of this, Zeliek.
Yeah.
Zeliek died, he became an undead, and yet he could still command the light.
Well, and I think this whole conversation fits in really nicely with the Lorewalking in general, but also with what we're doing in game and have been for like the last essentially 2 expansions, well, 3 expansions really, because between Shadowlands, Dragonflight, and now the War Within, what have we been doing? We've been recovering actual Titan information, actual records of like their keepers and what they knew about them and things like that. And we're starting to piece things together that we never knew before, or only knew what we were told from inaccurate accounts. This is prime territory for the lore walkers to go stick in their nose in there and find out what's what. and then use their magic to extract the truth, right?
Which I think then leads, if you're going to, I think this leads into my next one.
Go for it.
After this, because it would be Tyr's hand, the original Kingdom of Lordaeron, and what all that is connected to.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like we've talked a lot about the Curse of Flesh, and this is one I think really you could bounce a lot of stuff off of. You could go in a lot of directions with it. We could get to see finally how the Curse of Flesh was created, what it is, how the old gods weaponized it, whether or not it was an original thing that they came up with or the Titans always had it. Because the implication of the Discs of Norgannon that we find in Ulduar, in Uldaman, which remember, those are the uncorrupted ones. The Discs of Norgannon you find in Uldaman, unlike anything you get out of Ulduar, are the original uncorrupted ones that Tyr stole along with, not Algalon, the two that are there, Ironaya and I keep wanting to say Algalon, but I know it's not Algalon. I hate this. My brain is doing this.
It's okay. I can't remember either. Continue on.
But Ironaya, Tyr, and the guy who I should be remembering but can't. The three of them grabbed the discs and boogied. And Tyr's buddy, the one that got himself cursed and eventually died, if you're a paladin, he's a whole part of the, I want to say Cronus. That dude stood and fought to hold off Tyr's, hold off Loken's forces so that Tyr and his friends could bug out. They got to what is now the region around Uldaman. But first, before they got to Uldaman, they landed in what's now Lordaeron. There's the tomb of Tyr is actually up in the mountains of Lordaeron. Literally, you can look down and see Lordaeron City. You can see Tirisfal Glades, and it's called Tirisfal Glades because that's right where Tyr fell. That's where he died. Tyr dies in Tirisfal Glades. That's why it's Tyr's Fall. But when he did, he obviously took out two of the Cathraxi. We've talked before about this, so we've talked about the Cathraxi and how they might not be, as easily understood. They might be like, if they were willing to work with Xal'atath, which we see that they were to a degree.
Yeah,
there's something about them.
We pointed this out when we talked about in the last episode. So I guess mild spoiler-ish, not really. But you never really see the Cathraxi in service of the old gods. Like, they're kind of there, but they're kind of not. And every time we've seen them, it seems like a deeper perversion. Like, faceless ones all day long. Those definitely seem like old gaudy. But the Cathraxi seem way more void aligned, at least in their presentation.
And it's weird because, like, the first time we see a Cathraxi, it's Vizax. And we don't know what he's doing there.
No,
like,
but
he doesn't... Go ahead.
I was going to say, but he's outside of Yogg-Saron's prison.
Yeah, and is he when we get there, we have to get past him to get in. If he was working for Yogg-Saron, why would he stop us from going in there and finally freeing Yogg-Saron like Yogg-Saron wants?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a strange thing. All of this we were just talking about just made something hit me in the skull. And I'm going to say it because I think it could be really interesting. What if Xal'atath was supposed to be the Titan in the Void Titan? What if Xal'atath is that entity, that spark, that soul that got flung into our cosmos, not to become a disease or a parasite the way that the other ones seem to be, but to have become a Titan or something like a Titan? Maybe the fact that even the word Titan is just misleading because it sounds like they're all the same thing when each one of them could be completely different.
Yeah, like Titan is like a classification at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
but
think about that.
You raise an interesting point, right?
Yeah, like what if, and more importantly, it would explain, like, if the Void Lords were not all of one mind, which of course they're not. They literally see 1,000 truths. They see. It doesn't take all. One of them decided this isn't working. Let's just rot the whole thing down.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the old gods. They threw in little bits of essence to become old gods. But another one was like, no, we got to stick to the plan, man. And then the other one's like, what plan? Like there is no plan. There's only a possibility, potentiality. And they just started arguing. And that's why this is all happening.
Yeah, I mean,
like there's beings that are totally opposed to all this bullshit. And maybe that's why the Naru exist, to balance Light's flaws with Void's flaws and create an entity that can kind of bridge them. Maybe that's what the Naru were for in the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, it's entirely possible that we'll get to the end of Xal'atath's story and find out that she's not. She is a villain, but not the villain we thought she was. But yeah, like they could start exploring that a little bit and see, like, again, just taking this back to lore walking, and I don't want to go too tinfoil hatty with it, although I'm sure folks at home are eating it up. But it's one of those things where like they could fill in some of those blanks, moving, because this is the ones we have now is moving into midnight. The ones we may get in the future will probably be in between points during midnight, depending on how lore walking is received, and potentially from midnight to the final Titan. And these are opportunities to fill in those gaps. I think they have a lot of opportunity to leverage, specifically around the Titanic entities plans, but also like maybe a little bit of the first ones or things like that, because we talked about this last week as well. We know that the brokers exchange information, and we know, or at least you and I suspect, that they are related to the ethereals, not just because of what we see in that one particular thing, but we've been saying this for a while. They're too similar of entities to not be related in their function and their societal like views, but their
behavior,
their behavior and everything else. They've, like, we go back to the grimoire, they correct us, and it's the brokers that have a lot of information. They can go anywhere. They're freely capable of traveling between realities, through the twisting nether, into the different elemental realms, apparently, because why not? Like they literally showed us they could do that during Shadowlands. It's not out of the question for the lore walkers to go talking to them, because the lore walkers have something that the brokers value higher than anything we've traded them, and it's information. Because if there's probably stuff that the lore walkers know and have recorded that the brokers don't know yet. And the brokers probably have stuff that the lore walkers don't know yet either. And I can absolutely see Lore Walker Cho going up to one and going, yeah, you know what? I've got 5 stories for you. You give me 5 stories, I give you 5 stories. How's that sound? Like, I could see something like that happening.
We'll give you 4. You give us 6.
Yeah, but
that's how it starts. Like they get in, they sit down, and then there's like the last time we see it before they actually get the stories is just they start bargaining.
Yeah.
Like, how do I know your stories are worth it? And maybe Cho's like, all right, I'll give you a free one. And then we go 5 and 5. And he's like, well, show us the free one then. And then you could actually have a Lore Walkings episode about the Lore Walkers.
Which we're going to get into that at a future date, folks. But I mean, there's so many other ripe stories and ripe opportunities for this too, right?
Yeah, and there's also stories that are not like this big cosmic thing happened because you dragged me into it. But we could do, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that one of us, as soon as one of us mentioned it, we were spiraling off.
Well,
down
and
the road.
I've got one more for you before we move away from cosmic stuff.
Well, just let me say this before, and then to let you do yours. You could also do small stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with that. They don't have to tie in that way.
Mm-hmm.
With that, go ahead, do your next one.
Oh, I was going to say the big one that's been staring us in the face for generations at this point, for over 20 years of game time, the Emerald Dream, right? Like,
oh yeah, okay.
There's so much about the Emerald Dream we do not understand. We've been
told so many contradictory things about it,
and we've been shown so many contradictory things about it, and we've posited so many different possibilities for it. Like the fact that it connects to the Shadowlands, it connects directly to Ardenweld, but also connects to Azeroth. Why is that a thing? Why is it the waiting room from the Shadowlands to Azeroth? Where was it made? Why was it made? We were initially told that it was the backup for Azeroth in case anything ever went wrong. But we know that that's not necessarily the case. We saw the reorigination device. We used the reorigination device. We have records of the use of the reorigination device, and it wasn't anything to do with the Emerald Dream. We've literally gone into the dream or sections of it multiple times. We've seen different aspects of it, and each one seems as vast and as different as the Shadowlands itself. I mean, going back to Ouroboros and the thousands and millions of doors that are just hanging above it, like the fact that the Emerald Dream has probably countless portals that lead other places is probably not a mistake or not an oversight. Why was it made? Who made it? Is it naturally occurring? Is it something that just, is it the life version of the Shadowlands? Is it proto-life? Like, I would love to know more about it, more about like the first time the Titans or somebody discovered it, the first time like it was like understood maybe what it was, or maybe the fact that nobody understands what it was. I would love to see something about that. And I'd love to see something explore how all the different folks that interact with it or have interacted with it, maybe not necessarily just on Azeroth, because don't forget, other characters in Ardenweald made reference to it, and not just because they are in Ardenweald. How they revere it, how they view it, how it played a part in sort of like their cultural burgeoning, right? I would love to see that. I'd love to see the gaps filled in there, because it's so ripe for it.
You know, when we first discovered the roots of Druidism for the Kultirans, we discovered that they were getting their Druid tradition from a race that seemed very similar to the Vrykul.
Very similar. And we know why now, a little bit.
A little bit. But one of the things that occurred when you see them as Druids is that they are much more attuned to death than the Druids we are used to, who seem much more attuned to light and life. Mostly life, really. Although they do have, they have the spell Wrath and the spell, the Moonfire one. So they do have spells that are more like based in just power. I just keep coming back to this idea that like when we went after Jaina, she was trapped in some kind of weird nether realm that was accessible through that tree the Drust had in Kultiris, in Drustvar.
Yep. And
that tree, we see trees used over and over again as, ways to draw power to and from the Emerald Dream. And we saw Ardenweald connected to the Emerald Dream. And I keep coming back to this idea that it's possible that Ardenweald isn't just connected to the Emerald Dream.
That is a section of it.
It is a part of the Emerald Dream. It is also a part of the Shadowlands because it is a realm based around how life feeds new life.
Maybe.
And how death is the process. Death is the road by which living things give up their anima, and then it's given to new living things. And in some cases, the same living things go into that cycle. Like a soul, a self can go into that cycle through Ardenweald, because Ardenweald is right there. It's the fixture point between Shadowlands and whatever you want to call the Emerald Dream. And go ahead. I can't hear you talk.
No. I was going to say, you made me think of something. You slammed something into my brain too, which is, this sounds a whole lot like we're describing the seasons of life of a tree, right? Like all these different aspects of it. Like they're the autumn or the winter, the spring and the summer of life. And all these sections are sort of like little pockets of it. That sounds a whole lot like they could do something with Ganir, right? Like Ganir is like the giant cosmic tree, the first tree.
And we've often viewed Ganir as an entity or, like a being that can have children and like the world trees are crafted from her and so forth. But if the mother tree, like we keep seeing the cosmology depicted as an orrery with all the sections, and it's like built around this ring. And what if you then instead you use Ganir as the model?
As Yggdrasil, right?
Yeah. And you think about like fell is blight, something on the tree that is growing in wild, chaotic, and possibly dangerous ways. Then there's light, which is just, the trees reach to it. They want light. life, which is what trees represent. It's what they draw from. But death is always in the roots, right? You're always going to be drawing up death from the roots because that's how they live.
And trees,
the life of the tree comes from the death at the base.
And not only that, but trees are living entities that have, regardless of your scientific belief, they've established that trees have some form of like environmental wherewithal. And if a section of the tree, let's say, no longer is able to receive the optimal amount of light or becomes too blighted, some trees will stop delivering nutrients to that section of it and let it atrophy and fall off. They'll essentially cut it off, kill that portion of themselves to then take that energy and push it somewhere else, which is, it happens in nature. Why not would Ganir be capable of doing the same thing? Right.
And you think about like every aspect we've seen is related to what trees do. Like the whole the deal about, arcane power. Well, how many times have we seen arcane power in World of Warcraft related to plant life?
Just look at not Battle for Azeroth. Look at Legion what happened with the tree.
Warlords of Draenor.
Well, I was going to say, look at the tree being used to cure the arcane sickness.
But look at also
the Arcane
again going back to Warlords of Draenor, where we see the plant entities, like it's the breakers and I can never remember what the plant ones are called, but the rock ones are the breakers. But the plant ones, they literally step forward into Azeroth because they represent that push. But they do it, they create arcane means to travel. They're like harvesting the anima as a direct power. And that's what arcane magic seems to be. Raw anima pushing on things. Other forms of magic work easier because you don't have to deal with the inexorable power of anima. Anima wants to do specific things. And if you're telling it, I want you to make lightning, it's like, I know we're doing the life thing. All right, fine, lightning. I just feel like there's a lot. The fact that trees create shadow canopies that kill other trees. Trees, by their nature, by existing, Ganir doesn't want any other time ways. It doesn't want you to split off from the one true timeline, even though it needs all that possibility to grow from a tiny little sapling to a giant tree. It doesn't want competitors. And that's, so you've got a void, you've got a shadow land, but you've also got literal void. And I really like the idea of, instead of using the orrery, you use a big tree for this. And now it suddenly makes sense what Ganir actually is. Ganir is the tree from which all other trees come, ultimately.
Ganir is the tree of which all realms are born, right? Like it is
literally the mother tree.
Yeah. And we find out that Ganir was cultivated by the first ones, that this is part of their experiment. Because if you look, like going back to Shadowlands and going back to the sepulchre of the first ones and everything we did there, nature, and I'm going to air quote nature, is present there. How many large scale trees do we see on islands and floating around? Like it's not a foreign concept to them. And I'm not just talking like Arnold, I'm talking like the proto trees we see in the workshop of the first ones.
Zareth Mortis.
Zareth Mortis.
But you just made me think of something else, namely that all the Zareths might be connected via that tree. But more importantly, we keep wondering where the first ones went.
What if they are the tree?
Yes, they made the tree out of themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they fed themselves to the tree, like Odin, 9 nights, but theirs is eternal. They gave themselves for knowledge. They gave themselves to the tree's creation. Well,
they gave themselves to the defense of all the reality, essentially, right?
Because they're trying to stop whatever that devouring stuff is.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before, and it would make sense.
When the first world tree on Azeroth, the one before all the other ones, the one we find out about because it eventually got destroyed and its roots seem to be the only thing left, that was created to protect Azeroth. That was a shield, just like Ganir might be a shield for all existence, And there's a lot to this. But I feel like I really do want to move us past all the cosmic stuff for a second.
Go back.
Because there's smaller stuff that we've never seen, and I would
go
love
for
to
it.
see. What happened between the first and second war.
Yeah, there's a big time gap
or
there.
even during the first war, there's stuff that we just kind of get told and we don't know anything about it. Like, oh yeah, at this point, Lothar got caught by the orcs in the dead mines. Huh? And the daughter of Ren Blackhand was there with this ogre. Huh? like you tell us this is happening. We see the end of it when our character goes in. Why did Lothar go there again?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's just one of many, many things you could do. Who is Anduin Lothar? Like, is he related to King Lane Rin's wife? Like, is that his sister? It's certainly the case in the movie. It's implied in other places. If that's the case, I mean, it makes sense, but say it. So, Lothar was Varian's uncle. That's why he took him like he did. That little boy that he saved wasn't just the King of Stormwind. He was his nephew, which makes him, and thus his son, Anduin Wrynn, part of the Arathi bloodline, which we know they are anyway, because we know that every one of the seven kingdoms is descended from people who left the nation, the League of Arathi.
Oh, you just made me think of two other things too. Good Lord.
Go for it.
I mean, there's one that's staring us right in the face, the founding of the Arathi Empire.
Yeah. Which really would kind of like both the original one and then the new one.
Yeah.
You
could bookend it.
We know bits and pieces of the original one. For example, if you played an Arms Warrior, you got your hands on Stromkar.
Yeah.
Stromkar was the blade of the Arathi Empire. Can you imagine if you went to the new Arathi Empire, which they just call the Arathi Empire, and you pulled Stromkar out of your butt?
Yeah, because I mean, with it being the blade, there's zero way that they would not recognize it, right?
It's so memorable that trolls to this day, you go to any troll dungeon and they run away from it.
And we know that WoW, I was gonna say, we know that WoW's done that in the past before with the original Ashbringer.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you would go into the Scarlet Monastery, nothing would attack you because like, oh no, you're the Ashbringer. Cool. I'm gonna bow down here. We're cool. We're not aggro.
We're good. Yeah. But also, like, when you see Stromkar, like, you take it, there's multiple dwarven dungeons I've taken it to, the dwarves literally just run away in terror.
Yeah. And
I felt bad a couple of times because like I was playing a Tauren at one point and the I'm trying to paraphrase this because it was rooted in a comic book TV show that we were watching. A friend of mine and I were in a 5-man, and when I pulled that thing out, because we were just clearing our way through it for shits and bleeps, we were clearing our way through it. At one point, I pulled it out, and everyone started running away. And my friend who was playing a shaman, looks at me and goes, "I'm deeply hurt." Because it's the real troll killing blade. It's the original one that Troll Kalar is it's a homage to. It's like Troll Kalar is the song Tribute by Tenacious D for Stromkar. This is just a tribute. So yeah, you could do that. I'd love to see, you could do an entire thing about that very foundation though.
Yeah.
Like, why did they leave? Were they one of the groups that was going out to create other kingdoms the way the 7 kingdoms were?
Yeah, were they called specifically? Was there something that influenced them?
Did before he died, did Arator himself, did he call them together and say, "For you, I have a special mission. You will take my bloodline," because that's Lothar. Lothar is the bloodline of the first, king of Stromgar. And you take my bloodline with you. And then that's what the Stormwind one was too.
Mm-hmm.
What if the Stormwind group wasn't meant to go to Stormwind?
Yeah.
Maybe they got some of the ships got blown off course or something. So some of the followers of Lothar were with them and some were with the other group. And that's why
there's lineage of the family of Lothar there in Stormwind.
Yeah. But what if they were never meant to go there?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to settle right next to more trolls? You just had that whole fight with trolls. Why would you voluntarily go down closer to the other trolls? Unless you just really wanted to fight more of them. So yeah, there's a lot to that you could do. That would be really cool.
And you can start doing things like, speaking of like the human empires too, you could go back through and do some clarification and clean up of stuff involving Varian Rin and the time beforehand. Like, you're talking about stuff that we hear about but we never see. And we just talked about this, I think, on the main show podcast, either last week or the week before. But like, you could show, you know, the birth of Anduin. You can show that life. You could show, going back further, the death.
You could see Tiffin in game finally.
Yeah, you could see Tiffin in game finally. You could see the death of Tiffin. You could see the ramifications of that, the change of who Varian was. But more importantly, you get to see who Varian was before that happened, which we've never seen. We've never, we don't know what type of person he was, who he was. We know that
the only time we saw one thing in game.
One thing.
We saw the dude in the sewers on Vikaz Island with the mustache.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I would love it if we remade mustache Varian, like it's canon, that before he got split up, he walked around with that mustache. This looks good. Why is everybody complaining? And you get to see his best friend at the time, Bolvar Fordring, going, Varian. You'll notice I have a full beard. That you just can't just. Are you Thomas Magnum? Oh. Because if you're not Thomas Magnum, Varian, you cannot do that. You cannot rock the stash like that. I think I look very good.
But you could expand it even further too. Like, now you got me thinking, because like now you could do everything with Bolvar. You could do his storyline and fill that in. You could fill in with Kalia Menethil. Is he related?
Yeah, is he related to that other Four Dragon?
Yeah,
Lady Felt, the one that helped them during the. Ooh, and you could tie it back to what we were just talking about.
Yep.
Because you could have it when Anduin Lothar is leading the people out. Lady Four Dragon is helping. Is she like related to Bolvar? Is he her kid or her brother or something? And who was she? She's a big deal. Yeah. Alan and wise, she's a huge deal. We never see her.
No, we know precious little of her.
Years later. Yeah. And then you got that whole idea about like what, we know what they all did after the war and during the war, but what was going on? Like we only have the vaguest sense of what was going on in terms of how these various nations related before the war.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Dalaran existed and it had like mages doing mage stuff for like 1,000 years. What was it like to just live in Dalaran?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did people go from country to country? Were people going from Lordaeron down to Stormwind? Obviously, Lordaeron was the largest, most powerful, and most wealthy nation of the Seven Kingdoms. Why? It didn't have any, like, Stromgarde didn't have the original line of Arathor anymore. They had the Trollbanes who were Arathor's second in command. Why did they take power there, and why did the line of Arathor leave?
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. We don't have no idea why a lot of this stuff happened. Hell, we don't even have the Troll War, which I think would be really good to see. Like, what was the deal? Why did the trolls hate the elves and humans so much? Like, was it just that they felt they were getting pushed out? Was it that they thought they were inferior?
Or was there an outside influence pushing them to do it? Like,
yeah.
Like,
we're not even like we know that they had the weird shadow magic stuff, right?
Yeah, we have not even remotely talked about in like, that's another one that would be a really great aspect to maybe explore. And we're running short on time, so I don't want to go much further than this, but like, Shadowhunters in general have barely been touched upon. And in fact, they never have really been touched upon in game, outside of like Vol'jin vaguely describing what a Shadowhunter is and does, which has been half the time it's a game warden for Loa, half the time it's a spiritual advisor to its people. Maybe it's all of those things. Maybe it's none of those things. And maybe it's an aspect of a long forgotten shadow magic tradition that, no longer exists elsewhere. And maybe there's a reason for that. Like, we could explore that. Like, there's so much about the trolls we don't know yet. Like, There's so much you can do with time walking to fill in these gaps without having to devote an entire expansion to them. And that's one of the things that I really, really like. I was really impressed with the implementation on the PTR and the whole concept of it. And it's, again, something I've been asking for decades at this point, like at least 10 years. Like it's just so ripe with potential. You can use it to fill in so much and tell bits of story that have never been told before. And I think that's really, really cool. I really like that potential. Now, the initial request was that we would pick 5 stories that we want to see lore walking. I think we gave you like 30. So
we're sorry.
I'm not.
I feel like the person who said this, of all people, would know what we're like.
Well, so then I say you're welcome. But that's going to do it for us, folks. Again, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefit like early access to our podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast for the queue, and an ads-free site experience. Again, if you have questions, send those in, podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line and any special pronunciation of your name. You can also hit us up on Discord. We have the Q and Podcast Questions channel open for everybody. Then we have the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel, which is a special place set aside for our Patreon subscribers as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on. And then you can also send us messages directly on Patreon. I do want to thank our listeners. I have a list of a ton of different topics that we will probably be breaking out into when it's relevant. Many of these are off topic topics, so we haven't done a lot of those in a while, so expect probably a grouping of them soon. So thank you for everybody who's sending those in. We really appreciate it. And continue to send those in. Tell us what you want us to talk about. You want us to tinfoil hat about something for an hour and a half? Let us know.
Yeah. No, please don't. Please don't do that. No, please don't tell us to do that. No.
But with that, folks, we'll see you next week.